Wake up, neighbors, that's the Untold Experience podcast. With the no holds barred deliverance, we do this in remembrance. Off the facts that we stand on, we do this as a semblance. It's the podcast, it's the podcast. Experience. It's the podcast, it's the podcast. Experience.
Dun-na-na. What up, y'all? This is Craig.
Hey, y'all. This is Tasha, and welcome to the Untold Experience podcast. First, we'd like to thank you all for listening, because without you, we wouldn't have a show, we wouldn't exist. Thank you all for your feedback, your support, and for your love. Secondly, just a quick reminder that we are not experts by any means. We're just two lovebirds going down the proverbial rabbit hole. Today, we're actually taking a deep dive into Malcom X's interview in 1963. So just sit back, relax, grab a drink, and join us in our virtual living room for this profound discussion. Also, almost forgot, stay tuned till the end of the show, because I have a special apothecary recipe for all of you. So
yeah, honey, and I can't wait. I can't wait for that. That's a great thing that you do at the end. It's very informative and very useful. So I would advise you guys to stay tuned.
Thanks.
So jumping right into this debate, this hot topic debate, Brother Malcom X being interviewed at the University of Berkeley.
Yep.
I first came across this on, I think it was YouTube Shorts. I saw the debate and I thought it correlated or tied into, kind of what was going on with our, just with our community. Our brother Snoop Dogg and a couple other brothers, Nelly,
Soulja Boy,
Rick Ross, Soulja Boy. They've been in the news recently. Snoop Dogg more so than the other three. Just receiving backlash for his performance at the inauguration.
Yeah.
Which, we both agreed that we didn't necessarily agree with the performance. Although, we definitely still support our brothers, and just, want to put that message out and let you know that it's okay. It's okay to stay in support of someone you don't disagree with. I think that, you made a really good point, about, still keeping people in the fold, mm-hmm. and not necessarily pushing them to the outside. And I know sometimes that happens in our community. We kind of ostracize people for doing certain things that we don't necessarily agree with. Mm-hmm. And we just want to remind folks that it's okay to disagree, mm-hmm. and still, be in line, or still support. And still support.
Yeah, because a lot of people think that because you disagree with someone, you have to fall out, or you have
right.
to cancel them, or they're no longer invited to the cookout. Yeah, right. Whatever. But you never know what's going on in people's lives. You never
Absolutely.
know why they make certain decisions. So just because people, especially like the performances at the inauguration, even though we may not agree, that doesn't mean that we have to cancel them. So.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
So segueing straight into this this topic of conversation, it's dissecting Malcolm's interview at Berkeley in 1963. So in this debate, there was a white male commentator and another black man by the name of Herman Blake, mm-hmm. who worked as a teaching assistant at the University of Berkeley. Both seemed poised to discredit our brother Malcolm. Mm-hmm. The questions that they asked, just the vibe that they gave off was very combative and very condescending. Mm-hmm. Even the brother that they had on the panel, with him being a teaching assistant, I thought that was the first kind of odd sort of clue to me, that
indicator that they were trying to set him up.
They were trying to set him up, because why wouldn't you put another professor to go along with, to kind of, maybe.
Or why wouldn't they have another black moderator?
Right.
Why was there a white moderator, with this particular interview?
Yeah.
So you want to go over the first question?
Absolutely. Let's do it, honey.
Okay. So the first question that was asked, was asked by Herman Blake, and it said, "Is it true that the Nation of Islam organization uses violent means to attain its goals?" and why this notion persists in society.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty ironic that he brought that up, and a pretty broad kind of thing to put on Muslims, by making the claim that all Muslims endorse violence, which is what the commentator was kind of getting at. When we clearly see that white Christians have exemplified the same behavior, even to a harsher degree, throughout our history.
Burning crosses, lynching,
right.
all of those things.
I mean, all of those things, and so to put a stamp of violence on a whole, religion or culture of people, I thought that was again another pointed way to, to kind of single
and generalize, stereotype,
right.
racial tropes, all of those things are generalizations, right? So Malcom X responded I'd say he responded very candidly, and he was stopped in his response. So Malcom X replied by saying the Muslims that had accepted the Nation of Islam had never bombed any churches, right? He says that they've never murdered any little girls, as was done in Birmingham at that time. He said the Nation of Islam has never lynched anyone, and has never been guilty of initiating any violent acts. So to have that perception, that rhetoric about the Nation of Islam was without evidence. And again, just stereotyping people because they were able to stand up for themselves. So the notion of violence concerning black people, that still exists today. Harmful narratives and stereotypes like the angry black woman or the aggressive black man proves this point. There's no substantial evidence that shows that black women are always angry. There's no substantial evidence or empirical evidence that shows that black men are violent or that black men are aggressive, right? So the same thing happened with the Nation of Islam. They were coined as aggressive and violent, even though they have never displayed any violent acts. So,
at least on a large scale, or really any scale that was comparative to their Christian counterparts, right? And so, I thought that the brother Malcolm made a great point in response to that, by saying that we as blacks or minorities should never allow anyone to attack us, right? Especially if we haven't broken any laws. And then, especially laws that relate to violence. And he was just saying, like, it doesn't matter who it is. If it's a dog, if it's a two-legged dog, you execute them. You do something about it, right? You don't let this person or this animal just attack you, right? So, and he also made another point, which I thought was profound. He said, accusing blacks of violence is like accusing a man who's being hung from a tree that struggles vigorously against his lyncher and is accused of violence, but not the lyncher themselves.
Exactly. So wait, for those who don't know, most black parents, any parent, teach their kids about respect. They teach them about obeying the law due to the mortal danger that invokes, and also to display courtesy. However, to your point, why aren't those who are the lynchers, the racist groups, or those who actually discriminate against people who are for the most part respectful, who are for the most part who obey the law, but their oppressors are never the ones that are considered violent? Not
at all. And I think that we can speculate as to how that comes about, but I think me and you have talked about it before, and I think that this goes all the way back to elementary school, right? When you are in a school of predominantly whites, and you go into the lunchroom, for instance, and you see how it begins, right? You can see at the tables when there's all white kids sitting at a table, and there may be one black kid, but for the most part, the minorities sit amongst themselves or they sit alone. Me as a principal, or me as someone that has some control over this environment, I I would at least feel like, we would need to do something about this, right? We need to do something to change this up, because we see
the segregation starts in the school.
In the school, right? We can see in society how this is perpetuated, and it starts from grade school.
Well, Malcom X's answer to that question was, why aren't the oppressors considered violent? Well, he said it was because of propaganda and psychological warfare.
And psychological warfare, meaning this was intentional, right? So, you're living in a country where you're intentionally held back, but I'm supposed to pretend like I don't notice it.
And I'm supposed to allow you to continue to oppress me.
Right.
I'm supposed to allow you to continue to make me feel less than. I have a story. When I used to work at a particular college, and some of you listening may be a part of that college and may actually remember this story. We were all taking a photo. In the comments, it's a faculty photo. And as we were all out there was a woman putting bunny ears behind my head as we're taking professional photos. And the only reason why I knew that she was putting bunny ears behind my head is because she accidentally hit me with her hand. So I turned around and was like, what are you doing? Now, if I would have went off on that lady, I would have been seen and viewed as the aggressor.
And you had every right to
when she crossed my boundaries, right? And that's the byproduct of this psychological warfare. And that's a byproduct of us seeing defending ourselves make us violent people. So I'm here to tell y'all right now that I've actually revolted. I'm going to check every single person that crossed my boundaries. I'm going to always stand up for myself. Because me not doing so, it still produces the same outcome. So me not speaking up in that moment, I walked away feeling defeated. I walked away, letting this person know that their behavior was okay, because I was afraid of backlash. I was afraid of being coined the angry black person or the aggressor. So I did nothing about it in that moment.
Well, and I think that this is where you say, our white advocates or
allies,
our white allies, right, should step up and say something in that situation. You should not. You should know. Okay, so I'll just PSA announcement to my white brothers and sisters. If you're in a situation you only see one black person, you have to know that they're probably feeling uncomfortable, right? So just take into consideration, okay, you don't necessarily have to make this person your best friend, but if you see something that doesn't look right, you should say something, right? Because your voice matters.
Your voice has privilege. And I'm going to say something too, PSA, to all of my white brothers and sisters out there. First of all, there's a difference between being not racist and anti-racist. I would have to say that everyone out there in the comments who saw me, because first of all, I was the only black employee at the time, or only black out of 200 people taking that photo. I was the only black one out there in those comments. So for somebody not to see those things going on and to not intervene, that didn't make them racist, right? So that made them not racist.
Right.
But the difference between not racist and being anti-racist, stepping into that allyship, is speaking up, letting your other colleagues, your family members, your friends know that certain behavior is not okay. You are the ones who have the power to take the burden off of me for having to defend myself and being aggressive. You're the one who has the power to move from a bystander to an ally. So I'm asking you today to choose whether or not you want to just be not racist, be okay with watching marginalized things happen, watching discrimination go on, or watching, mistreatment and harmful narratives, things like that, and not saying anything because you're not racist, or would you want to move into that anti-racist? Moving from a bystander to an ally, that means stepping up and saying something and intervening when you know that the burden would be too great for the person that's being harmed.
And you should want to do that, right? I mean, as an American citizen, as a patriot, whatever you want to label yourself as, that should be a common. If I see something or someone being mistreated, I'm going to say someone without question. It doesn't matter what race they are. And so, and when you say bystander, I think that also includes, situations where, okay, that person may not have said something in the moment, but then when it's just you and them to the side, then they say, oh yeah, I did agree with you. Oh yeah, I did notice that. And it's like, okay, that's great that you notice it, but it's more important that you say it in the moment.
Right. It's more important that you intervene, and to pause the situation.
Yeah, right.
To prevent it from creating even more harm.
Yeah. So, and that kind of leads into my next point, with the white guilt complex. I know that's something that doesn't like to get talked about, but we have to address it, because how much does it drive you to remain indifferent? Or at least, at the very least, feel like an outsider to the conversation. And you're not. You're very much an insider in this conversation.
And that brings me to the second question that the white moderator asked. So the white moderator asked, says, the Nation of Islam have not attacked, even when black people were attacked, right? That goes into it's like asking him, why didn't you intervene with the fires at Birmingham? Why didn't you intervene when these people were being lynched? So he's saying, okay, the Nation of Islam has not intervened. Is this fact contradictory to some of the basic principles of the movement? And Malcom X responds by saying, you know what? I think you should be happy that the Nation of Islam did not attack.
Happy, right?
Yeah, and it was funny because during that part, the white moderator was like, come on, let's not go there. Like, he really paused and stopped Malcolm from perpetuating that type of message, right? Even though we heard the message loud and clear. It was already too late. That message got out there. Like, you should be happy that we don't cause an uproar, right? Because we most definitely would be, first of all, within our rights to do so.
Definitely.
And then second of all, it would just be, in response to protecting ourselves.
Right.
So Malcolm's point here was interrupted, as I stated before, by the white moderator. Why do you think that happened? Especially since the black Americans are seen as aggressive. So why do you think that he stopped Malcolm from perpetuating that message of, if we was to rise up, every one of you will regret it?
Almost patronizing them, right? By implying that Muslims are just all talk and no action.
Right.
When it comes down to it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, listen, it's easy to talk slick when the odds are stacked in your favor, right? Just like they used to say black people were dumb, but they made sure that the nails were sunk into the coffin by making it illegal to read. Like, and I know I've said that to you so many times that to me that blows my mind that actually was a thing, right? Like, I want to read. I'm here to read, and you're saying no. Go home, or I'm going to beat you, kill you, or take you to jail, and then call you dumb.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But Malcolm goes in to explain his opposition towards his former words. So he goes into answering the question. I think that violent retaliation from black Americans is so feared that just contemplating the thought brings anxiety for everyone, right? Because this type of reaction is justified, again, as I stated before. But he explains his opposition towards integration because he states that it's not true integration, right? He says that if integration was real and the laws was on the side of the black citizen, he would integrate. He would intervene, right? What he's saying here is that the reason why the Nation of Islam does not get involved is because they don't agree with the messages, like the message to integrate, the message to as I say, assimilate. He didn't agree with talking white, in order to be accepted. He didn't believe in acting white, dressing the way that they were dressing in order to be accepted. His message was that, hey, we need to be able to y'all call it code switching today. We should not have to code switch in order to have a seat at the table, in order to be taken seriously. So he's saying the reason why he didn't integrate or intervene is because he does not agree with the message of integration, because it's not true integration. He says that the act of continuing to protest under the conditions of being dogs being sicked on them, people being taken to jail, people being beaten for just exercising their civil right. Those conditions was foolish, because demonstrators should have the right to resist if their rights are being violated.
Absolutely. I mean, at the very least, like, you have to defend yourself, right? Isn't that what the whole Second Amendment is about? Mm-hmm. So again, that whole integration thing, I understood where Malcolm was coming from, because why integrate when I know that the rules are stacked against me? Mm-hmm. Why am I going to code switch? Why am I going to wear my hair white or talk white when it's not advancing anything, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he even made the point that if the laws, we shouldn't have to rewrite laws, right? Mm-hmm. We shouldn't have to make any exceptions, DEI programs, civil rights movements, right? If we just abided by what the Constitution says, just based on the words alone, mm-hmm. right? We shouldn't have to write any more laws, because it says all men are created equal. What else do you need to write? Right. That means women, that means gays, that means black, that means white, that means everybody, right?
And that was Herman Blake's third question. He said, is it then Malcolm's assertion that white Americans do not believe black Americans should have equal rights and opportunity? And what is his opinion on the civil rights movement? So right now, seeing the attacks on DEI initiatives and the revocation of the EEOC, I'd have to say that the same today still reigns true. I've even heard black Americans today supporting dismantling the DEI initiatives and dismantling it. Why? I don't know, right? The division between the black community reminds me of the division back in the day in slavery times between the house slaves and the slaves in the field.
Yeah.
So it's right. And so it's like this rhetoric, especially with the inauguration performances, the divide between the community, whether DEI, rescinding DEI initiatives and EEOC, there's that discord within the black community. So that discord and that division is, again, to me, psychological warfare.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And in my research, I was thinking, because I'm always relating something to something that I can make sense of, mm-hmm. I guess, for lack of a better words. And the thing I came up with was two gladiators in a Roman Colosseum, right? And I was thinking, like, man, in these situations, usually both men, assuming they were men in most cases, were provided a weapon. Mm-hmm. Now imagine if only one was provided a shield and one was provided a sword, mm-hmm. right? You can imagine the crowd not being, they wouldn't accept that, right? You wouldn't accept, I'm here, I paid. Unfair. It's unfair. Yeah. Right? It's unfair. So why on earth would I pay for this? Why would I enjoy this? Why would I allow this to be considered a competitive thing? Mm-hmm. And so, it just it really just makes me think, that whole, history is written by the victors, mm-hmm. right? So, does that mean you get to, do what you want? Does that mean you get to, just kind of push other people to the side? So
yeah. Well, if white people really pass meaningful laws, it would not be necessary to pass anymore, just exactly like you said. There are already enough laws to protect American citizens, and that's exactly what Malcolm was saying in response to that third question by Blake. He says that you only need additional laws when you're dealing with those who are not regarded as American citizens. He goes on to speak of the hypocrisy of not wanting to seem racist by acknowledging that black people are citizens, right? So that's, again, remember I say this all the time, they may not want to see us lynched anymore, mm-hmm. they may not want to see us hanging anymore, but they damn sure don't want us to have reparations, right? Absolutely. So that's what he was saying here. He goes on to say that if black people were real citizens, they wouldn't be a need for civil rights legislation. Mm. And that was it wasn't that he agreed disagreed with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. It was just that he was saying that we should not be fighting for civil rights because we are already citizens. When you have citizenships, it's automatic. You're automatically covered under the Declaration of Independence, right? It's automatic. But white people don't need, it's funny that white people don't need civil rights laws.
Right.
And so that's what they're trying to use today in our federal government. They're trying to say that DEI and EEOC is reverse discrimination. So first of all, how is it reverse discrimination when you don't need any of civil rights legislation in the first place because you're automatically considered a citizen? Right? DEI initiatives, and to all my black people out there who think that, it's not for us, it absolutely is for us. We're the pioneers. Yeah, we're the ones who get through the door, and once that door is open, it helps other marginalized groups. It helps everybody else, but it damn sure is for us, right? When it comes down to that, because we're not regarded as American citizens, as Malcolm X was saying.
Right.
He says that this brings me to the reverse discrimination tactic being used to dismantle. Now, critics of DEI claims that the DEI initiatives discriminate against white people. How? When DEI literally has the word inclusion in it. It's not to say diversity, equity, and segregation. It doesn't say diversity, equity, and division,
right,
which is something that we're owed. Like, there are sovereign nations, as far as like Native communities, they have their own sovereign nation. I'm not saying that we're on that level or we should have that particular type of sovereignty, but we definitely should at least have civil rights. We can't have DEI, but, the Native Americans can have their own sovereign nation, but we're just asking to be included. So, the whole premise of DEI is for inclusion and not just for minority, but also for those in power.
And you should want to give it to us, right? I mean, if I understand, in a way, I understand reparations, I still feel like we should receive some sort of, whether it's free college, I'm not saying give me a handout, right? I understand that we have to work. And we have to be qualified.
But just don't block me from opportunities. We're not asking for anything to be given to us. We're not even asking for a head start, right? We're just asking those in power to not block black Americans from receiving homes. So, and they've done that by redlining. They've done that by stratification. That's a huge block, right? We're asking for them not to block us with employment. So I believe you're the one who told me that right now black women are the most educated group in the whole America. But now they're taking away EEOC to make sure those black women who have master's and doctor's degree are still looked over, right? They're still not protected even though they've gone through the ranks. They've gone through school. They paid their dues. Sometimes they're the smartest in the room, but they're actually being overlooked because of these initiatives. So now that is not protected anymore. So he also speaks of Malcolm also speaks of the hypocrisy from self-proclaimed allies and politicians. So that's where it brings us to why we started talking about this, because this directly talks about actors. So he says that all these programs are established for black people, but they are censored by having white people in leadership roles to guide their efforts, right? So, yeah, I hear some of your point when you're saying that the diversity, equity, and inclusion is not for black people because they have white people leading it, right? And that's something that we need to take a look at, right? Right, but what you see happening now is the byproduct of not having black people or people of color lead these efforts. Right now that, it's so easy to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, EEOC, because black people weren't leading them. So if there were people of color leading them, they'd fight a little harder.
Well, because it'd be rooted more in our actual causes and things that affects us, right? It wouldn't just be someone seeking, votes or some sort of personal gain from working with us, and we know that we've been played in that way as the black community, and sometimes it's a little bit disheartening to see our brothers and sisters getting, kind of drawn into the rhetoric and kind of forgetting the base of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting that Mr. Blake brought that information to him from, I think it was an article written by James Baldwin that he brought up. They claimed that roughly 90% of blacks in America supported Dr. King's movement and mindset versus 45% for Minister Muhammad and the Muslim movement. And so, Brother Malcolm then, kind of gracefully disagreed, but the thing that he brought up was
gracefully.
You know how Malcolm is. He's smooth with it, So, but he basically mentioned the Newsweek poll that Mr. Blake brought up and referenced the comment earlier by saying that the leaders that were siding with Dr. King's ideology versus Brother Muhammad's and the Muslim movement was mostly entertainers, right? I think he said Lena Horne. I think he said Dick Gregory, who ended up becoming a leader in our community and an activist himself. But at the time, back then he was a stand-up comedian.
I didn't know that.
And so, and Malcolm was just saying, it's always entertainers that are sent from our community to speak for us as leaders, right? He said you never see a white comedian or white entertainers when it comes time to speak about something that requires some substance and that's not entertaining, right?
Who were the white leaders represented in the inauguration?
I can't even remember, honey.
No, it's the Amazon. What's his name?
Oh, you talking about with Trump? Oh, yeah. With you had Elon Musk. You had Mark Zuckerberg. You had Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook. I even seen Dana White. Right? I think I mentioned it to you. Like, why is Dana White, the owner of, shout out to Dana White, but why was he standing next to Barack Obama at the presidential inauguration? I thought it was extremely weird. Everybody thought it was extremely weird because it's been blowing YouTube and all the social media sites up as far as us becoming, and we've been, supposedly an oligarch system, meaning, we have billionaires affecting our elections, right? Basically buying the elections to make sure, or just putting up so much money to ensure that, the vote goes their way, so to speak.
I think Elon Musk gave like $45 million a month.
45 million. And they say, and so to me, Elon Musk does not have any real interest in our country, right? He's somebody I would consider a globalist, right? Somebody that just goes around the world, right? Because he has ties in Germany, he has ties in China, he has ties here. And it's like, how can you affect our political system when you are not even a real resident? Like, you're not even in the trenches with us. I mean, and that was clear, with your little victory speech at the inauguration, right? With the whole Segal, he says it's, it's interesting. He says it was a comment from the heart. And they showed I seen a clip of him saying something similar. Oh, this is from the heart. But then he made a clear gesture from his heart with a hand symbol, right? So you know what you're doing, right? You knew in that moment, okay, yeah, that may have been from the heart. Yeah, it was a little corny, but you knew enough and was aware enough to be mindful of what you were doing with your hands. So that tells me you knew what you were doing, right? So, that's a danger to our society, right? And
well, I also want to point out to our viewers, who are our black leaders represented at the inauguration?
Snoop Dogg, Rick Ross, Nelly,
and who was the most profound leader?
Soulja Boy. We send Soulja Boy, right?
Who's our leader? And
this is who's representing us. So when white people are looking at this presidential time, this very important time, we're seeing black people perform, and almost like it's just kind of clownish. It just seems like a clown show kind of thing, and I can see why so many people were against it and had so much
well, it goes back to it goes back to what Malcolm was saying. Like, though, as far as, and it's so funny how it mimics this time period for our people is exactly the same as 1963. We have not made any progress since 1963 because we still have comedians and rappers representing as our leaders.
Right.
Malcolm goes on. I'm sorry. Did you have anything else on that?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, because I was like, don't get me started. Okay, so Malcolm.
You could, girl.
Well, Malcolm goes on to say that he is suspicious of any black leader who leans too heavily on white liberalists. And that is one of the reasons why I kind of disagreed with this monumental moment of, Snoop Dogg and all of them representing. I think that this is the only reason why I think that they probably should have declined because of this statement. To me, he felt that this way because at the end of the day, folks are always going to choose themselves, no matter how liberal your white friends or how much of an ally my white brothers and sisters that you think you are. Malcolm knew that at the end of the day, what are you willing to sacrifice for this movement? What are you willing to sacrifice for your black brothers and sisters? I'll wait so that you can think about it. And if what you're willing to sacrifice is very minimal, think again about calling yourself an ally. Think again about calling yourself a liberal.
Absolutely. Because we're at a crossroads, right? We're at a crossroads where you can't sit on the fence really anymore. You can't be comfortable with just these distractions that we have. I mean, sure, it's nice to have an iPhone and an iPad and a big screen TV, right? But what does it really mean if you're not ingraining yourself in furthering the movement, finding out how you can help, how you can educate yourself, ways to push the agenda, right? Because we as a common folk sometimes feel like we don't have any power, but we got all the power, right? Look at what we're doing right now. Like you may not be a podcaster, you may not be a public speaker, but there's so many different ways that we can become involved and kind of get behind this movement. And we're not just talking about black people again, right? We're talking to everybody in the world. We're talking to our white brothers in particular, because in this country, you guys write the laws, right? You guys have all the businesses. So we need you guys to come to the table and further this conversation. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So what else you got, honey?
Well, I was saying if you had anything else, because I'm sorry, I'm stealing Pete's at his notes. He got some good stuff down there, and I was wondering if you needed to dive into anything else.
Well, I think that we pretty much touched on everything that we wanted to get to. Let me see if there's anything else that I think that you kind of, you brought up a couple of things that I was gonna speak about, honey. So that's okay, because you flushed it out, and you really brought a lot of detail to it. So I appreciate that. I just think that the interview in itself was, again, really profound and really telling about the two different mindsets. You talk about the house Negro and the field Negro. That concept is still prevalent, and it's still very much a thorn in our community. And I don't know if there is a way to get rid of it. I think that it's as long as we have the divisions that we have in this country, I think that we'll have the divisions amongst ourselves as well. I think, like I said, if the laws of the land were true and we were able to hold them accountable, I think that we may not see as much of an issue, right? Because we would not be coveting these special positions of feeling, above anyone. If we were all equal, if this is all even playing field, there would be no need to feel over someone, right? Like, to me, that's a weak mindset anyway. Why do you need to feel like you over somebody in order to be successful?
Right.
Yeah, and I've always thought that was kind of weird. Even as a child, like, if I see somebody black that has a nice car, to me, that was a thing of pride, right? Like, not even necessarily a nice car. I'm just using it as an example. You know, it was a thing of pride for me to see us doing well, or to see us, you know, standing shoulder to shoulder with someone and not having to look down or feel second class. You know, so, you know, I don't know, I really have a point to that other than just, you know, I think it's important that we stick together and we come through with one another on this.
Absolutely. You know, and in closing, when it comes down to the interview, which I thought was really, really good, guys, we will link that interview in our show notes so that you're able to take a look at it for yourself. I think,
and watch it.
Yeah, please watch it. One of the last things that Malcolm said was that when Black people wake up and see that America will never fully accept us, they will fight to receive independence from the government, not unlike the independence afforded to our Native friends, right? He states that we are our own economic system and society, so that we can solve our own problems, right? We're able to prove that we are human. We are a part of America. We are citizens. And we are a part of the human family just like everyone else. So that's how I want to wrap up the interview.
Yeah.
Anything else?
You know, you made a good point that I was going to speak about, but I kind of lost my notes. I just saw it, but anyway, that's okay.
Well, if you remember, while I go through the apothecary recipe, we're going to come back. He going to come back, y'all, with his thought. I'm going to go forward with, and you just stop me, because you know how you get. If you don't say it right there, you'll lose it. So just stop me. So, the apothecary recipe for today is Oxymels. OXYMELS. Oxymels, okay? So Oxymels are herbal preparations made by combining vinegar and honey to create a tangy and sweet mixture infused with the property of herbs, right? The preparations are used for health benefits and are both flavorful and versatile. Did you find it?
I'm still reading.
Okay. They offer digestive support. They offer immune boosting effects. They offer respiratory relief, anti-inflammatory properties, and also antioxidants. They can be taken by the spoonful, diluted in water, or used when cooking. So it's similar to like your apple cider vinegar, right? It's like you making your own apple cider vinegar, but you get to make it for multiple things. You know how your apple cider vinegar, you can just take a little spoonful of it once in the morning and you're good. Well, that is a form of Oxymel, right? But here I'm teaching you how to do it on your own. So your ingredients for your Oxymels would be vinegar. You can use apple cider vinegar. You can use white wine vinegar or any other mill vinegar, right? And then you would need honey. I would say use raw, unprocessed honey. And then you would need your herbs, right? So your herbs, unlike the recipe that I gave last week, when it came down to the oils, the herbs needed to be dried. Well, with Oxymels, your herbs can be dried or fresh. And just to give you a few herbs that you can use, lavender. Lavender is antimicrobial. It helps with stress, headaches, and skin conditions. You can use ginseng. Ginseng is adaptogenic properties. It helps with fatigue and cognitive conditions. And then also dill. I thought that dill was something that was pretty awesome and profound. Dill helps with digestive issues, gas, liver problems, and gallbladder complaints. So please research different herbs to understand what their medicinal properties are for yourself, okay? And you will also need a glass jar. So you would need vinegar, honey, herbs, glass jar. Now the instructions is to choose your herbs. For example, thyme or sage are used for respiratory health, and elderflower are used for taste. You would chop or crush the herbs up to release their flavors and properties, and then you would put them in the jar. So fill the jar with a quarter of the way full with the herbs. So if you have a jar, you're going to fill it like to about that much with herbs, and then pour your vinegar until the jar is 3/4 full. So you have, if your jar is like this big, you're going to have this much herb, and then you're going to fill it with vinegar until it's like a quarter of the way from the top. And then once you've done that, you're going to fill the rest of the jar up with honey. Top it off with the honey. Seal the jar and place it in a dark, cool place for about 2 weeks. Shaking the jar daily to make sure that you're getting all of those medicinal properties in there. After 2 weeks, after the fusion time, you're going to strain the mixture. And then remember, your herbs that you're separating from the mixture can actually be reused. So keep that in mind. That is a money saver. So for bottling, so pour your oxymels in a clean bottle, seal it, and store it in the refrigerator. The mixture will last for about several months, and be sure to label and date it. And there you have it, folks. You now have your recipe to make and create your own oxymels.
That's cool, honey.
Thanks.
Super cool. Well, I hope you guys got all that stuff down. I did happen to remember the point that you made that I was going to make myself. Not to drag it out, because I think that we definitely hit on the things that we wanted to hit on, but I wanted to leave you guys with the one thing that stood out the most to me in the interview with the brother Malcolm. And you said it, there will come a time where black people stand up, right? There will come a time.
We cry.
Okay. So, and that's not to incite violence. That's not to inspire you guys to go do anything, but we can tell, right? We can tell that the American people in general are fed, not just black people, right? Because you look at the brother Luigi, who just off the CEO from United Healthcare,
yeah.
Right? Again, we're not inciting violence, but there's a clear indication of a revolution coming. So we would advise you guys to become more informed. Go watch the video. Like Natasha said, she's gonna put the link in the description. You guys can go watch the video, dissect it for yourselves. You know, you may have a different take than we did. This is just our take. But get involved. Get involved and stay involved, right? Like this is a time where we need to tighten up. You know,
to stick together.
And stick together.
And when he said stand up, I don't think he was necessarily meaning that we actually stand up and have this violent resistance.
Not at all.
Which we are, we're.
That's an aspect of it.
Yeah. We're not so opposed, but it's rather those non-violent resistance, like coming together and having the non-violent resistance, like boycotting, not buying from places.